First, though, a father is calling for justice after a coroner has ruled his little boy was unlawfully killed. Toddler Sam Harry was in the care of his mother and her ex-boyfriend when he was rushed to hospital and died from a brain hemorrhage. They each blame the other for the death of the 19-month-old. The coroner said at the inquest yesterday that he had not the slightest doubt at all that Sam was unlawfully killed. Yet the Crown Prosecution Service have said that there is no realistic prospect of conviction because both blame each other and both say they were not present when Sam was injured. Well, in a moment, we'll speak exclusively to Sam's father, Nicholas Harry. But first, let's take a look at the story so far.
Sam Harry was 19 months old when he died. Swung or shaken around, he'd been thrown at a force equivalent to a 60 miles per hour car crash. It caused a catastrophic brain hemorrhage. The coroner said there could be only two people who knew the truth that tragic day, his mother Deanna Buffum and her then boyfriend Ryan Bate. But they weren't saying. It meant police can't prove who's responsible and there can't be a prosecution. The coroner, sitting at the court in Ampthill, spent time questioning the couple. Deanna Buffum now lives in Scotland. She appeared via a video link. The coroner asked her, "Did you inflict that injury on Sam?" "Absolutely not," she replied. "Did Ryan?" he asked. "I can only assume so," she replied. Ryan Bate was asked the same question. He said no, and then suggested it must have been her. There were a number of breaks during the hearing. Relatives and friends needed to get outside. There'd been harrowing evidence given over the 2 days.
Recording a verdict of unlawful killing, the coroner, Martin Oldham, showed some emotion. Indeed, his voice faltered. He said, "Ryan Bate and Deanna Buffum do know the truth. They have simply failed to come forward with that account." He then went on to say, "I have not the slightest doubt at all that Samuel Harry was unlawfully killed while in the care of the couple."
The family welcomes the verdict, but they want a change in the law to allow prosecutions in cases like this. One police officer says the case was the most frustrating he'd ever worked on. Sam's paternal grandmother says it doesn't end here.
We won't give up. We're not going to, we're not going to back down now. We'll still keep on our fight to get justice for Sam, because that's what Nick vowed to do, and we have to do that for Nick to move on in his life. That's what we have to do.
Police will keep this case open. Their hope is advances in forensic science will one day give them the evidence they need.
Well, that was Sally Chidzoy reporting. Nicholas, Sam's dad, is here with me now. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously absolutely devastating for any parent to lose a child in any circumstances. When did you discover that it might not have been accidental?
It was 2 days after Sam's death. Sam died on the Wednesday and the police came around to us on the Friday and sort of sat us down and explained that they'd launched an investigation and the two people had been arrested, Sam's mother and her partner at the time.
And how did you react to that?
We was amazed. I mean, obviously we were in bits anyway. Our lives had already been torn apart and torn from us. And then to find out that this might not have been an accident. At the hospital, we were sort of led to believe that it was congenital or there might have been some sort of disorder. And I'd used them facts to comfort myself. So when the police came and sort of took that away from us and said, no, this has been done to Sam, it tore us apart, and to this day it's torn us apart.
And as the situation has unfolded, you've now heard from a coroner, you've heard from the Crown Prosecution Service that they have no doubt that Sam was killed unlawfully.
That's right.
But
yeah.
There can be no prosecution.
It's so frustrating. I mean, in a way, it's sort of like rubbing salt into the wound. A lot of people yesterday were asking me if I felt content now and whether I felt like justice had been done, but it's completely the opposite. I mean, it's been confirmed by the coroner that it was an unlawful killing, and it's been confirmed by numerous medical experts and the police that it's one of only two people. And these two people are still walking our streets. They've got no criminal record, they've got nothing to stop them from working in schools or sort of being around children. And they've lost the child. Sam lived with them sort of most of the time. So they've lost Sam, so they're going to have a need to be around children, and that's what really worries me.
But, I mean, the Crown Prosecution Service has said that the situation is that Sam died in an 11-hour window when he was with his mother and her ex-partner. They blame each other and they both say they were not present when he was killed.
That's right. And all that we've got left to go on is what they're telling us. Until the police, we're waiting. That before Sam was cremated, they took his eyes and they took part of his brain, which will be held, and they're going to be used in the future to try and narrow down the time frame in which Sam died. If they can narrow the time frame down to a half-hour window, then they'll be able to point the finger, and they won't have to ask them which one of you killed Sam. They'll be able to say, we know it was you.
You did take up your victims' right review with the Criminal Prosecution Service. Just tell us what you did and what they said.
I've known all along that the police have done everything they can. They had 30 people working on the investigation full-time initially, and I don't know how much they've spent. They must have spent thousands and thousands and thousands. They've sent specimens to Australia and to America. They really have done everything they can. And likewise with the CPS, I can understand their reasons at present, because they're abiding by the current laws. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that these two should still be free. One of them's lying to protect the other one, and one of them's killed a child. It just doesn't make sense that they're allowed to be free amongst our society.
Tell us more about Sam. He looks like a gorgeous little boy.
Sam was absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you can see in the video you just watched that he's a bright, bubbly personality. It really hurt me in the courtroom yesterday when both of the defendants, sorry, they're not defendants, but both of the witnesses were saying about how Sam was and describing him just as the Sam I knew, which was, he was so charismatic and he was so forward, and he was going to be a fantastic, bright man once he grew up, but it was just taken away from him.
So how has it changed things for you as a grieving father? I mean, how can you grieve when you're caught up in this situation, which is clearly so frustrating for you?
It's very hard. I mean, I'm reasonably young. I'm 30, so I haven't dealt with that many deaths in my time anyway. So I'm dealing with the death of my child. Well, at first I'm dealing with being a parent, which was a bit of a surprise. And then shortly after, I'm dealing with the death of my child and a murder investigation. So it's been 2 years sort of out of this universe. It's been really hard to grasp. But we're never going to be able to fully recover until we get justice for my son. So we're pushing and pushing and pushing. We're running an online campaign, Justice for Sam, on change.org, where we've got 20,000 signatures so far, but we need to get it up to 100,000 signatures so that we can present it to Parliament and say, look, something's not right. We know, I don't know what the law should be because I'm not trained legally, but we know that this is wrong. We know that this shouldn't be allowed to happen.
So you think there needs to be a change in the law?
There needs to be a change in the law. There's two people walking free, one of whom's killed a child, and neither of them have got any sort of records.
We'll be speaking with our legal affairs correspondent in a moment on the position with the law. What options are open to you, though? Do you feel that is your best chance to get the law changed?
I think, yeah, my options are getting fewer and fewer by the day. The inquest was a big thing for us because I had the chance to instruct a barrister. The barrister represented us very, very well, and she asked the questions and tried to get them to repeat the lies in court that they'd told to the press. So if anything, we could have them for perjury or misleading the course of justice. Because as it stands, they haven't faced a single charge, and it's outrageous.
Well, it does boil back down to what the Criminal Prosecution Service and the coroner have said, that it was those 11 hours, and nobody outside actually knows what happened in those 11 hours.
Which is awful as well, because we don't know. We know the medical evidence. We know Sam suffered a subdural hemorrhage, which is a hemorrhage to the brain, and he had really bad damage to the eyes and his spine. We know that, but we don't know how it happened. We don't know what his last hours were like. We don't know why the person did it, or why they lost their temper, or what happened in Sam's last hours. We don't know if he suffered any pain. It's just completely open. It shouldn't have happened to my boy.
So when you saw him in hospital?
It broke my heart. I got the phone call about 1 p.m. and I didn't see Sam until he came out of the operating theatre. He had beautiful blonde hair, and he'd had half of his head shaved. And they'd taken away part of his skull to release the pressure because his brain was swelling. So they was hoping by taking away part of his skull, the swelling would start to reduce, but it didn't. It ultimately just got worse and worse. He was sort of bandaged up and laying there, and in some of the pictures, you can see he's got half of his eye open, which is, it seems a bit weird, but that's how I sleep as well. Half of my eyes are always open. So, but to this day, I admire him so much. He's an absolute inspiration, because we had to agree in the hospital to take away all sort of support so that he could go dignified, and we'd established that he wasn't going to make it. If he did, he in the slim chance that he did, he would be in bed for the rest of his life in a vegetative state, never be able to open his eyes. So we made the awful decision that no parent should ever have to make, to take away the support he's been given. He was laying across mine and Deanna's lap. Bear in mind that I didn't know what had happened at this point. I thought it was I didn't know there was anything malicious behind it. He was lying across mine and Deanna's lap. He kept breathing for a couple of minutes, and then he went slowly. And then 4 or 5 minutes later, there was a massive gasp, and I couldn't believe it. The doctors hadn't warned us, and I really thought it was some sort of miracle. I thought, oh my God, he's going to make it. He did a massive gasp, and then he lived for another 2 days without any medication. He just wasn't going to go. He wasn't going to be told, this is your time to go. He went when he wanted to go. And he done so well, and we're all so proud of him. He's
clearly brought so much joy to you in that short period that you had him.
Best period of my life, without a doubt. He's fantastic. He's made me who I am today, and he will always be a massive part of my life.
When you say he's made you who you are today, what impact has all of this had on you?
When you lose a child, it's a dire situation. I know that I'm untouchable now. Nothing's going to affect my life the way that this is. So anything else is on the way up. That's why I've got to use the energy that I've got, all the energy that I put into being a father. And being a father to a 2-year-old boy is quite something. It's quite tiring. So all the energy that I had and I put into being a father, I'm now putting into campaigning for his justice. And we won't stop. It's justice for Sam, it's justice for my family. We all need to move forward, and everyone's pushing forward with the campaign.
Thank you very much for coming in, Nick.
Thank you.
Well, we did contact Deanna Buffum and her solicitors, but they haven't come back to us. Ryan Bates' lawyers have told us that Ryan fully complied with the police investigation, after which the police decided to take no further action. Well, legally, this whole story is incredibly complicated. Our legal correspondent, Clive Coleman, is here to explain how this could have happened and what the coroner's judgment means. Clive, as we've been hearing, the coroner has said he's no doubt that this was an unlawful killing, as have the CPS, but no prosecution. How come?
I know. I mean, this is really a pretty unsatisfactory state of affairs as far as the law is concerned. Let me just explain, because there was a change in the law to try and deal with the situation where you had members of a household, a death occurred, and it was clear that one of the members of the household was responsible. Now, the law changed in 2004, so you know, it wasn't possible, if everyone was either blaming the other person or staying silent, to prosecute any one of those people for murder or manslaughter. But the law changed so that an offence was created causing or allowing the death of a child. Now, for that offence to be prosecuted, 3 things really have to be in play. First of all, there has to be a serious risk to the person, in this case the child, a serious risk of harm arising from an unlawful act. Now, that has to be foreseeable. So another member of the household has to foresee that one of their fellow housemates is posing that risk to the child, and they have to take reasonable steps to protect the child. If they fail to do that, and the death arises in a way that was foreseeable or ought to have been foreseeable, then that person can be prosecuted. And we saw this being used very successfully in the case of the mother of baby P, her boyfriend, and the lodger in that house. They were all prosecuted under exactly that offence. Now, what is different about this case is that there was no serious risk of harm. The evidence was that Deanna Buffum and Ryan Bate actually were caring in relation to baby Sam. Now, that really means that there is still a legal loophole. The law tried to close that loophole, but in circumstances where there is no serious risk, none of the housemates are on notice that another person in that house poses that serious risk, then there is still this loophole. And the Crown Prosecution Service, when they looked at it, found that, you know, in those sort of almost well, I don't know if they are unique circumstances. Maybe this occurs more often than we know about. But in those circumstances, there is not a realistic prospect of bringing a case against either of the two suspects.
So is the law likely to be looked at?
Well, as I say, the law was changed. It's up to Parliament, of course, now to change the law if they, you know, if that is Parliament's will and they see fit to do so. I think that, you know, the Crown Prosecution Service can only apply the law as it currently exists, and they can only apply their code for Crown prosecutors as it currently exists. So they can only look at the current offence and ask themselves, is there a realistic prospect of conviction? Now, in this case, they've concluded, regrettably, that there isn't, but I think it's left everyone very frustrated.
Nick, just a final thought from you. We did hear from your mum in our report earlier. She said the fight goes on. It's clearly the message we're getting from you.
Yeah.
Where next for you? What happens?
As I said previously, it's all about the petition now. It's all about change.org, justice for Sam. We just need as many people to sign as possible, and then I can take this to Parliament, I can take it to the House of Commons and say, look, something needs to change, because this isn't acceptable. We don't want people like this in our society. And as the gentleman mentioned, it's not a single case. It just doesn't manage to get into the media because the pair haven't been charged. It's very sort of legally complicated to report on it, but it's happening.
This must be dominating your life.
It is. It's taken over. I try to sort of compartmentalise my feelings and the petition and my work, but yeah, it's taken over.
I know that lots of viewers are getting in touch while we speak to you, saying you're incredibly brave coming in to talk to us. Charlie on Twitter says you're one of the bravest people he's ever known to speak about this live on TV. Heartbreaking. And Alicia on Twitter says absolutely heartbreaking interview with the father fighting for justice. There must be a change in the law. Everyone's heart's going out to you.
I really appreciate everyone's support.
Thank you. Still to